14. Suppose there is currently a tax of $50 per ticket on airline tickets. Buyers of airline tickets are required to pay the tax to the government. If the tax is reduced from $50 per ticket to $20 per ticket, then. So, real quick, let's just draw out our supply and demand. Price goes on the vertical, quantity goes on the horizontal, demand goes down, supply goes up. Let's put two taxes in here. So for the $50 tax, we can put it right there. And we know that the distance between these 2 points is 50. And then for our $20 tax, we can put it right there. The demand curve will shift up by 30, and the price paid by buyers will decrease by less than 30. Well, there's currently a tax of 50. Buyers are paying the tax, which means we did in fact shift our demand curve down by that 50 to get that red point right there, right? We shifted demand down. That would be D at the tax of 50. Right? We shifted it everywhere down. Now we're moving on to a $20 tax. Right? Well, if we're currently at this demand curve right here of 50, that's shifted down. In order to get the tax of 20, the demand curve is going to shift up by those 30 units everywhere and give us our new demand curve at our tax of 20. So then, yes, the demand curve will shift up by 30 and the price paid by buyers will decrease by less than 30. Absolutely. Remember, the tax burden is always shared between the consumer and the producer, which means even though the tax is falling by 30, the actual price they pay is not going to fall by 30 because of the elasticities of their curves. Which of the following is true of markets characterized by positive externalities? So if we have a positive externality, where this is private benefit, and this is private cost, with a positive externality, we think that there's some sort of additional social benefit that's not being included in our consumption of this good. So this would be the social benefit curve. Okay. Well, social value exceeds private value. Yes. And market quantity exceeds the socially optimal quantity. Well, no, currently the market quantity is down here at Q1, but our socially optimal quantity is all the way out here at Q2. So we actually see that the market quantity is less than the socially optimal quantity. So then social value is less than the private value. Well, that's not true. We can throw that away. C, social value exceeds private value. The market quantity is less than the socially optimal quantity. Great. Our answer is going to be C. Question 16. The vertical points between A and C represents a tax in the market. The loss in consumer surplus caused by the tax is measured by the area. Well, originally our consumer surplus is going to be this whole area. when we institute a tax, we end up with only this area left in consumer surplus. So the loss in consumer surplus caused by the tax is going to be this red area, which is P3 to A to B to D to P2 to P3. So then our correct answer is going to be B. Question 17. The vertical distance between point A and B represents a tax in the market. The loss of consumer surplus associated with some buyers dropping out of the market as a result of the tax is. So, from that graph that we just had, we can remember those same surpluses. Our loss from the tax is still going to be this same red area right here. That's what consumers lose. But in this question, it's asking, with some buyers dropping out of the market, well, all of these buyers here are still in the market. Up to that quantity of 1, everyone is still in the market. So the only people that drop out of the market are these people right here from 1 to 2. So the area we actually want to find is this purple triangle over here, because those are the buyers that drop out of the market. So then that area for the consumers that leave the market well, that's going to be 1/2 base times height, which is equal to 9 minus 6 times 2 minus 1, all of that divided by 2. That's equal to 3 over 2, which is equal to 1.5. So the answer here is going to be B. Tomato sauce and spaghetti. Question 18. Tomato sauce and spaghetti noodles are complementary goods. A decrease in the price of tomatoes will. So tomato sauce and spaghetti. So let's go ahead and draw this out. Okay. So then something happens to cause the price of tomatoes to fall. Well, if the price of tomatoes falls, quantity demanded is going to rise and quantity supplied is going to fall. But let's not worry about that right now. What happens in the spaghetti market when the price of tomatoes falls? Well, they're complementary goods. So if the price of a complement decreases, then demand for the other good increases. So we actually see our new demand for spaghetti is going to increase to D2. Right? That's what happens in the spaghetti market. So an increase in consumer surplus in the market for tomato sauce and a decrease in producer surplus in the market for spaghetti noodles. Well, no. So because demand has shifted out, both of our surpluses are actually going to increase in the spaghetti market. So increase in producer surplus in the market for spaghetti noodles is good on B. An increase producer surplus in the market for spaghetti noodles is good for C. Decrease in producers, no. So we can automatically rule out A and D. Now all we have to do is say, does consumer surplus decrease in the market for tomato sauce, or does it increase in the market for tomato sauce? Well, what's the only way price could have fallen in the market for tomatoes? Well, either demand shifts down, which makes price fall, or supply shifts to the right. Well, we know it's not a demand shift, so what must have happened must have been something here in this market that caused supply to shift to the right. That lowers price and increases consumer surplus. They now gain all of this blue area in here. So then we know that consumer surplus in the market for tomato sauce must have increased, and producer surplus in the market for spaghetti noodles must have also increased. Question 19. The price labeled as P2 on the vertical axis represents the, so P2 is our what? It's our equilibrium price. Right? So then difference between price buyers pay after the, no, right? It's only asking the price labeled as P2. So all we need to do is look for the equilibrium price, or in this case, C, the price of a good before the tax is imposed. Question 20. When a payroll tax is enacted, the wage received by workers, so I believe this was on your guys' quiz. So hopefully you've already looked over it and you know how to do this. Well, in this market, remember, who is supplying the labor? We're in the labor market, so supply is actually the workers here. And demand is actually the firms. So when a payroll tax is enacted, when we put a tax in this market, this top part is the price buyers pay. So that's the wage that firms pay. This is wage firms pay. And then this bottom one is actually the wage workers receive. So the difference between those two from our equilibrium is that the wage that the firms actually pay is now higher, and the wage that the workers receive is actually lower. So the wage received by workers falls, and the wage paid by firms rises. A. Question 21. Question 21. Refer to figure 625. The price that buyers pay after the tax is imposed is. Well, we've got demand, so we know that this was a tax on consumers because demand is lower. We've moved demand down everywhere by the size of the tax. So we can go ahead and draw our tax wedge in there, because our tax wedge is going to tell us at the top of the wedge, our old demand curve is the price that buyers pay. And the new one is the price that sellers receive, where the after-tax demand hits the initial supply curve. So we actually already have our price buyers pay. It's $8. Question 22. The figure below illustrates a tariff. On the graph, Q represents quantity and P represents price. The deadweight loss created by the tariff is represented by the area. Well, our deadweight loss is what things are no longer being included in surplus. Once we institute the tariff and our world price moves up, we lose all of this area DEF. Now, because a tariff is a tax, there is actually tax revenue from the tariff. And the tax revenue is going to be that area E. So then our deadweight loss is just going to be that area F plus that area D. That gives us B as an answer. Question 23. Which price and quantity combination represents the social optimum? Well, our social optimum is where our social cost hits our private demand in the case of a negative externality. So then we know it must be P2Q1. The price and quantity must be P2 and Q1. Figure 7.4. Refer to Figure 7.4, which area represents consumer surplus at a price of P2. Everywhere above price, below demand, is going to be our consumer surplus. So then we know the area FAP2 or AFG is going to be the area of consumer surplus. Question 25. The figure illustrates the market for calculators in a country. If this country chooses to trade, the price of calculators in this country will be... Well, what will the price of calculators be in this country? They open up to trade, so they're going to always pay the world price once they're open to trade. So it must be 20. We can cross off A and B. And then how many calculators will be sold domestically? Well, you can only sell calculators domestically that are bought domestically at a price of 20. Domestic demand is 80, so only 80 calculators are sold domestically. Our answer is C.